Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me remotely. I would love to be there in London with everyone, but unfortunately, I cannot because I'm trying to handle my thesis, so it wasn't possible this time. So I'm Despoina. I'm a PhD student at the University of York under the supervision of Dr. Colin Morgan and Professor Michelle Alexander. And today I'm going to talk about my PhD research in archaeogaming and specifically Twine. So the focus of my PhD research is on assessing the impact of different media for communicating archaeological research to the wider public. The main objectives within this aim is to use storytelling to mitigate knowledge, in my case to talk about Grave Circle A, which we will see in a moment, and the Aegean Bronze Age, to talk about ethics regarding the study and handling of human remains, to decolonize the history of excavations, and to dismantle the authoritative voice of the archaeologist by explaining that, unfortunately, we do not have all the answers about the past. Regarding the methodology of my PhD, epistemologically, it is grounded on methodological anarchism combined with pragmatism. It is a practice-based research, meaning that I have created the medium exploring without hiring any professionals to do it for me, and I have also designed and implemented the experiment about those media. I'm using a mixed methods approach, and therefore I have collected both quantitative and qualitative data. And lastly, my research is interdisciplinary, bringing together aspects from digital archaeology, public archaeology, bioarchaeology of personhood, archaeogaming, and storytelling. So my case, yes, regarding the framework, the tools that I have used to create the stories, these include osteological reports, archaeological reports in the form of original publications of the excavation by Schliemann, and also the archaeological notes from Sampatakous's diary, which was recently rediscovered, along with information from material culture, inscriptions on NRP tablets, and the Homeric epics. So my case study is Grave Circle A at Mycenae, which is in Greece. It's a Bronze Age cemetery in Greece. Some very basic stuff about chronology. I won't go into much detail, I promise, but just to have an understanding, the shaft graves are dating back in the late Helladic one, which essentially is 16 to 1500s BC. Whereas the encirclement around it, so the grave circle was built in the Mycenaean era. So there is a significant gap there, around 150 years. So now you can see here Greece, and right here is Mycenae. So here is the citadel. So as I said, the fortifications are Mycenaean, the grave circle are late Helladic one. So this is the grave circle A, and this is a close-up to the 6 graves. So it contains 6 very richly furnished graves, as you most probably know. And the story I've created is about grave 5 in particular, and specifically about individual with the code name MYC15, or otherwise with the letter, he was marked with the Greek letter TAF in Sampatakous's reports. And he was found wearing, they were found wearing the so-called Agamemnon's mask. So the story I have created is about the individual who was buried there, and addresses 3 phases. The late Helladic one phase by providing information about the life and death of the individual. 19th century excavation, when the excavations took place by Sampatakou and Schliemann. So Sampatakou was a Greek archaeologist appointed by the government to supervise Schliemann during the excavations because Schliemann didn't have a very good reputation after the excavations in Troy. So as you can imagine, the relationship between the 2 men was quite rocky. And then the 21st century, when the skeletons and the material from Grave Circle A was rediscovered as they have been hidden at the basement of the museum after the World War II. So essentially, the story has three main characters. Has three characters. The main one is the individual. The other one is the Greek archaeologist, Sampatakou, and the third one is Dr. Naflioti, who is the osteologist who got to re-examine the bones in 2003. I have created the same story in three different forms: a textual form with footnotes to explain everything, what is that we actually know, how do we know it, why do we know it, and things that we don't know, following Alexis Botin's example. An interactive version of the story using Twine, and an immersive 360 film. So the textual narrative looks like this. So as you can see, a very big part of the story are the footnotes. They are quite detailed, explaining everything, and they are based both in osteological, historical things, and notes, and as I said, inscriptions on NRB tablets and everything. When something is entirely fictive, I try to be very explicit and upfront about it, and everything that is essentially explained if it is based on archaeological evidence or any other form. Regarding the interactive version of the story, I have used Twine, which is a free tool, as you most probably know. Open source, and you can create interactive stories with it. There is definitely a learning curve, but nothing that someone cannot handle, and it is very effective given the hours that someone needs to put in the tool to learn it. And a lot of things are automated as well. The tools that I've used to create the story are the Twine platform, Canva, YouTube, Epidemic Sound for the background noise and the ambience, and wix.com to host essentially the game. The interface looks like this, and you can see it is like a web with different paths for each one to progress essentially the story. This is how it looks like when someone plays. The user can actually access both the diary of Sampatakou and the astrological one of So now regarding the VR experience, I initially thought to design everything in Blender and create an interactive environment, but I soon realized that such a project would be entirely outside of the objective and the scope of my thesis and my research, as I need the media to be able to be created by the archaeologists without needing long training or big funds. So I opted for a 360 film video instead, which then I edited and made it suitable for a VR headset. The tools that I use to create is a 360 camera, Insta360 to shoot the film, Premiere Pro to edit it, and SteamVR and Viveport to essentially make it compatible to VR headsets. I used both the Vive and the Oculus. That is how it looks like.
Over there. Yes, you. You've been looking at me, or what is left of me, a while now. You are the only person in the room. The lady's on her lunch break. Stop staring, for Potnier's sake. You creep me out. I'm lying here on this cold examination table to be re-examined for the 3rd time.
So yes, the black screen at the beginning was intentional. Essentially the user begins in a pitch black situation, and then they have a moment to adjust after the lights go on. Now the experiment consists of 2 questions and an interview, and was conducted in the UK, in Malta, and in Greece in 3 different phases. Regarding the process, 3 participants were treated with a pre-questionnaire to assess any previous knowledge on the subject, and then each one of them experienced 1 medium. Then they were treated with a post-questionnaire, and then they proceeded to experience the other 2 of the media that they haven't experienced yet. And lastly, we all gathered for an interview. So I have both qualitative and quantitative data, and I ended up with 3 datasets. One is the interviews and the metadata notes, which are helpful to evaluate the impact of the stories. Another one is a comparative data set between the pre and the post questionnaires, which essentially help to compare previous and new knowledge. And lastly is the post questionnaire data set, which evaluates the acquisition of completely new knowledge. I've studied the data using Excel. Essentially, I created some tables, but it's all statistics. And I produced the tables to understand which medium is essentially the most effective for my case study. Regarding the qualitative data, I analyzed them using thematic analysis, reflective thematic analysis, following the suggested steps to produce the final report with the themes, as you can see them here. And these are the final themes. So regarding the research question, it seems that Twine is the most effective medium to communicate archaeological research of the type that I am doing to the wider public. The interesting theme of the first encounter bias also came up, as well as suggestions that a combination of media might have been equally effective. Also, participants mentioned that authenticity is very important, which is nice to see, and they were happy that they could actually know which parts were fictive and which were entirely made up, and which were actually based on archaeological material. The theme of the treatment of human remains also came up, and the participants were concerned about the ethics behind the study and presentation of human remains, suggesting that it might not be a very good practice to have human remains as artifacts in display in museum settings. Participants were also troubled regarding the handling of archaeological artifacts and data during and after the excavations, and they mentioned the importance of keeping an archaeological diary. And also, interestingly enough, they did not actually focus on the mistreatment of Sampatakou by Schliemann as an individual, but they rather focused on the potential harm to knowledge that this rocky relationship could essentially have. Lastly, regarding the theme of colonial attitudes in archaeological research, that was a very interesting theme that came up, and it was really interesting to study the discourse between different people in the groups or different groups altogether, because some of the people were from countries that they have been colonized in the past, or they are currently crypto-colonized, and some others were from countries that they traditionally are considered to be former colonizing powers. So that's me. Thank you very much for having me. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.